The last few years have been tough. I know that, you know that. We've been dealing with COVID, which so badly upended our way of life. And then the huge spike in our energy bills caused by Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
The Prime Minister again deliberately avoids his hard Brexit, entirely self-inflicted on the UK economy by this government, which by almost every economic and financial measure has been disastrous for the UK. Now, of course, the pandemic and Russia's illegal war in Ukraine has had an impact on the UK's economy, as has rising energy prices. And yes, those were issues the government had no control over. But Bloomberg has calculated that Brexit is costing the UK a staggering £100 billion a year in lost output. That's roughly £40 billion less for the government to invest in the UK. Just think about that. It's £40 billion less to invest in our hospitals and our schools and our public services that we all rely on. It's one of the reasons for the Chancellor's anemic budget.
But together, as we learnt this morning, we have got inflation down from 11% to 2%. We have delivered on my first priority.
Well, actually, inflation has fallen to 2.3%, not 2%, so it's still above the Bank of England's target. And when inflation started to accelerate in early 2022, then Chancellor Rishi Sunak couldn't wait to attribute the rise to global factors. Now he's actually claiming it as a success for government policy that it's come down. By now, even Larry the Cat knows the job of cutting inflation is for the Bank of England. So any suggestion the government is responsible for it falling just insults the public's intelligence.
And we've shown the country that it is only this Conservative Party that can deliver the economic stability, the foundation of our national success.
Seriously? Cash-strapped local authorities across the UK have been forced to take out massive 50-year loans at soaring rates of interest in the aftermath of the Tories' catastrophic mini-budget, which has also left millions facing soaring mortgage costs and the risk of losing their homes.
The economy is growing again, faster than Germany, France and the United States.
Well, it's true the IMF predict the UK economy, as measured through its gross domestic product, would see higher growth than Germany and France, but it's predicted smaller growth than the United States. And other forecasters are less optimistic about UK growth, at least in the short term. The OECD, that's the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, predicts that the UK will have the worst growth in the G7 next year.
Wages have been rising faster than prices for 10 months now.
Pay packets are now worth less than they were in 2008 in nearly 2/3 of UK local authorities. Millions of UK workers are currently enduring the longest pay squeeze in more than 200 years. Not since Napoleonic times has there been such a sustained period of wage stagnation. That's not a record to boast about. It's a damning indictment of the Conservatives' economic record.
Friends, our plan is working.
Really? Never in living memory have families got so much poorer over a single parliament. We've now got record numbers using food banks, including nurses and teachers and even police officers. We've just seen the biggest rise in absolute poverty in 30 years. Millions are now living in poverty and destitution. That means they can't even afford the most basic living essentials. The number of children in food poverty has doubled. More than 14 million people are now living in poverty. 14 million. 1 million adults can't afford to eat every day. 9 million are skipping meals and cutting back on food. And millions more can't afford to heat their homes. And all that's before we get to the untreated sewage dumped in our rivers and crumbling schools and hospitals. Does all that sound like a plan that's working?
Now, we all know that the only certainty with Labour is that they will run out of money and raise your taxes.
Seriously? The tax burden under this government is forecast to increase to near record levels, and the UK now has the highest debt in 60 years. And the Prime Minister will fall off his chair when someone reminds him that thanks to him, millions more people are now paying income tax since 2010. Don't just take my word for it.
You made millions pay more in income tax by changing the thresholds.
And more adults than ever are now paying higher rate tax.
And it is we Conservatives, and only we Conservatives, who have that plan, who are prepared to take that bold action to ensure that better future for our country and our children.
Heaven help us.
Just look at our plan to cut migration and stop the boats with our Rwanda scheme.
Well, let's take a look at that.
It disapplies relevant sections of the Human Rights Act.
Just listen to that again.
It disapplies relevant sections of the Human Rights Act.
Just think about that. The Rwanda scheme actually undermines the fundamental principle that human rights are universal, that they apply to all of us. It actually disapplies key aspects of the Human Rights Act, which include basic minimum standards that exist to protect us all, creating a two-tiered system of human rights protection where adults and children seeking safety, who are threatened with removal to Rwanda, will not have the full protections of the Human Rights Act to enforce their rights in domestic courts. Just imagine what a dangerous precedent that sets. And just listen to this.
We've stopped them claiming modern slavery, right?
We've stopped them claiming modern slavery. And he actually says it with pride. What this bill does is shame our country. And what the Prime Minister doesn't mention is that a damning parliamentary report from the Cross-Party Joint Committee on Human Rights has just found the government's Rwanda scheme is fundamentally incompatible with the UK's human rights obligations, erodes the protections laid down in the Human Rights Act, contravenes parts of the European Convention on Human Rights, and falls short of the UK's commitment to comply with international treaties. And if all that's not bad enough, the report found the actions the Prime Minister is taking actually places the UK's hard-won reputation for the rule of law and human rights in jeopardy.
Who do you trust?
Well, I'll leave you to make up your own mind on that one.